Hi, welcome to the Lux channel. So recently I shot a video episode on using scripting languages and more importantly using a PHP scripting language for system software developers and kernel programmers so that you can use it for profiling and various other activities wherein which you don't need to use so elaborate something like the most commonly used language, something what you do everyday basis is C programming language. So this sort of leverages you can use some extensive string processing, you can do some kind of cognitive analysis, you can do various system level analysis using the same, and you can also use sometimes such scripting language platforms even for debugging to do some kind of unit level and module level testing as well, because if you are working on some kind of network application, you are writing some network stack, you can use some kind of quick dirty PHP code to pump packets in whichever way you want, whichever frequency you want. You just imagine this test application you are writing in C, something like that. It is going to take a lot more effort and it is not worth the time, because this is just a test application and it is not anything you are writing it for production use. So this is where the scripting languages come into the picture. So in the first episode I have discussed more than 15 minutes of introduction so that you will get that entire big picture and that overall context, versus in this episode I don't want to drag anymore. Let us straightly jump into the topic. So in the first episode I mentioned when you take such analytical data points, let it be about CPU profiling, memory profiling, or something related to network characteristics, you are capturing some bytes of data transferred for every second or minute or something like that. So these things you can, as I said, these things you can dump in a database, you can dump in some MySQL database, so that in PHP you can create some graphs using JavaScript or some other third-party tools like RRT graph and stuff like that, so that you can display the same, you can consolidate, and you can do whichever way you want. So many system developers unfortunately they just know about database, the overall the big picture of database when they are in the college, and right after that they must have never used in any real use cases. So this is where I thought this video I would like to focus how you can use the database for your specific tests and analysis and stuff like that. This is not the video about how you create a database and other stuff, because this is completely takes away the focus, because here is a situation you are really confused whether such a tool is useful or not, because you always think that is completely a different domain and it is not a domain you are working. So this is a sort of misconception. I would like to bring you guys into some unknown area where you can really harness the true potential of a database. So you can search any online guide, you can install MySQL database platform, MySQL server and MySQL client in your system. Once you install, you can get say sudo dpkg ---- list grep MySQL. So you can see there are various components installed. You can see PHP MySQL, because PHP can access the MySQL database, and as well as you have this MySQL server, MySQL common and stuff like that. So once you install everything, you can generally read online guide about the same. So this is not required, I feel, for this video. So once it is done, you can access the same. You can provide whichever permissions you want. I don't want to protect it with any crazy passwords. I just kept a password as you can see here, root, and root is the username and password is welcome. So with this you can use the database. So show databases, you can type a command where I have created a database for Toffee website, because here I maintain certain tables meant for Toffee website. So and these are offline database points I maintain here and other stuff, so that once in a while I export this into a kind of an offline export of the same to publish in the website. So use Toffee website. So once you do the same, you can see it is now selected that database. So show tables. If you type the command, it shows all these tables. So this is the way you can navigate the database. You must have already read in the college, and then you can type any SQL command. So select star from std, and then you can do anything you want. But the main objective of this video is to teach you certain shortcuts, not to do in a sort of a crazy manual way. Just use some tools so that it is much faster, and you can devote your time onto the real productive aspects of using a database. So what you can do is you can install a tool called HeidiSQL. This is a fantastic tool. I'm using it for more than a decade, to be frank. So I do certain things via command line. I'm not saying that I don't do it. Obviously, whenever you execute a command, it doesn't matter whether you use HeidiSQL or command prompt, because even in HeidiSQL you can run commands. So you can see here it has been opened. There is you can visit HeidiSQL website. You can see here you can read some documentation about installation and stuff like that. So you can see all sorts of required stuff. You can even install in Windows and stuff like that. So you can download the portable version. So once you download the same, once you run it is running it on top of Wine. As you know, Wine is meant for Windows emulation. So this is actually an heidsql.exe file. So I'm running this exe file because it is platform independent compatible exe file, so that it doesn't use some crazy Windows dependencies and stuff like that. So this simply works in Linux system as well, but it is a windows.exe file. So you can open the same. So once you open, you can see here this is the same database table. Whatever you see in here is shown over here. So this way it's going to cut down a lot of time, and in this you can create your schema. Schema means how you want to create your tables and other stuff. So in this you can use your schema and then create tables, because I don't recommend you being a novice to create tables and stuff like that with some stupid SQL commands, because you are completely, this is not your domain and this is not the place you need to invest a lot of time. Your objective of using the database is try to export certain data points and performance evaluation. You can do it in the future using this data points, and then you can traverse either manually or else you can use any tools like PHP or anything as such. You can use any software so that you can traverse across these data points. So you can see here you have the same, and if I click this std database table, I'm sorry, not database, it's tables. Database constitutes tables, tables constitutes rows and columns, as simple as that. So if you click the same and if you go to the basic, you can see here it shows all these fields, and each has this field type and other parameters. So once again, in case you are confused, or in case if you are curious after watching my video, later you can visit even MySQL standard documentation and you can learn various things. That's fine, but initially you need that initial push to think about something, to use it in your day-to-day requirements or any sort of analytics. So you can see here you have various fields, and then there are other tabs which shows various other things. In the indexes I have this primary key, and again this is something you must have read sometime and then you must have completely forgotten. I am going to little bit touch this primary key alone because it is going to help you in a big way. So apart from that, you have other stuff, foreign keys and create code. This is also useful because this is the actual schema of your table itself. So anytime if you want to generate this table in some other system, all you need to do is copy this, and you can even do this in command prompt. You can just paste it and you can create that So as simple as that. And other than that, you have this data tab. It is also quite useful because here is something you can directly go here and say you can directly edit this field, since it is a date field, like say aug 2018 or something like that. You can just edit and you can delete the same. So you can see here you can do all these things. So this is also useful because whenever you need to update any rows, you can use the command update in SQL, and then you can update these rows. But you may introduce any issues, you may introduce any bugs if you do that manually. Of course, if you do it via tools, if you use it any SaaS applications, it is fine. But if you don't use, you update it via command line, sometimes you can make a mistake, and this is something not a table just like that you have created. Sometimes you may use it for real serious analytics. So in that way you can introduce any bugs and errors. So don't do much manual updating. And this is a tip even hardcore database experts also do the same. So they don't just simply update something just like that, because it is very dangerous. By mistake you have typed the row ID wrongly, it is going to create unknown consequences. So it's quite dangerous. And similarly, this is a place you can execute any commands. So SQL commands. So select star from std ssd. You can do the same and you can run it. So you can see this is same equivalent as what I did in the command prompt. So with this, I hope it gives some kind of introduction. So let me quickly show you how you can create a basic table so that you can use it for some kind of profiling purposes. So for that, what you can do is you can again use this tool. Somewhere if you do right click, you can see here it shows create new and then a table. So this way you can do the same, or else you can do it in command prompt also, create table, and then you can define that schema. But again, schema itself is quite tricky how you define the same. So please use some tool like this, because you are not a full-time database expert. So create new table, and you can mention the table name. So let's mention it as test table, something like this, test underscore table, whatever you want. And then you can start adding rows. So always I suggest you can have a specific row like an ID, so that you don't introduce some kind of duplicates, or this is also required to identify any duplicates. So that way you can create a row, I'm sorry, not rows, it is a column as ID. So you can mention as integer, and then here you can mention as like say auto increment or something like that, or else something like that. So each time whenever you create a new row in the database, it itself picks an identifier, and it will be keep incrementing the same. You don't need to do this manually, so it automates the same for you. And this is the beauty of database, because database itself is to have that data consistency and other stuff. This is the main objective of using a database. You can introduce certain constraints and other stuff. So this is what it is. So you can do the same, and you can mention whichever other things. Allow null, you can disable the same, because this should not be null at all. This should be always filled with certain value. So that's what it is. And then after that, you can say you can have some kind of a timestamp. You need to timestamp like you have picked the data point from your system, CPU usage or anything. Like I said before, you can have some kind of timestamp, something like that, and you can say here timestamp. You can mention this is like a timestamp, and then you can say default on current timestamp or something like that, so that this also is automated. You don't need to do anything for the same. So whenever you insert rows, so this is also something I'm going to demonstrate shortly. And other than that, you can mention say let's assume you are taking some network parameters. Let's do let's exit, and if I do if config, let's take an example. You are taking this bytes of TX packets and RX packets, so you are putting in the database. Let's assume this is one of the use cases, and you are monitoring time to time. If I do again if config, this number is going to change time to time based on my network usage and other stuff. So let's assume you are doing something like this. So maybe you can mention as RX, and for the value you can mention as varchar, something like that. So default maybe you can mention as say 0, so that you don't have this field as null, because you can have always some integer value, not something like null. So again, I don't want to go much in depth. There is a significance in database. If you use null, it really means something, and if you don't use null, it really means something. So I don't want to go much in depth. If you are curious, you can read further. So again, you can mention as TX. So you can see here it has copied this schema from here. So once you do the save, it is going to say there is one, it must be defined as a key. So as I said before, there should be one field, it should be mentioned as a key. You can take this and you can mention indexes, add remove it. You need to mention this as a primary key. Let me see how you can do the same. Let me just remove the same, because this is something usually I never do this kind of manual creation. I'll take an existing table, I'll copy the same, and then I remove the columns whichever I don't want, or the fields whichever I don't want, and I'll add fresh fields. This is something always I do. So I never done this for a quite long time. So let me just explore the same. Yeah, you can see here, if you right click this field, it shows this create new index. So there are various things you can do. You can create also unique keys. I'm going to even explain that shortly. So if you say primary key, and you can see here in the indexes it has filled automatically. I have not done the same. So after I did below, it has filled the same. So this way the key is added here. So now you can do the same. You can do save. So once it is saved, you can go to data. You can see here it is empty. Currently the table is empty. So here if you want to insert anything manually, insert row, and you can just enter some test data, say 100 bytes you received as a part of RX, and here 200 bytes you have done a TX, and once you click here, everything it will automatically fill. So this is the beauty of a database. So if you have a nick card, it is generating these values. See, if you do if config, again this is changed. You can see here the bytes is changed versus what you've seen here. So each time as you feed it into the database, everything is taken care of. Again, you can do it manually through PHP inputs. You can do also automated by defining the schema in the database. So this will be done automatic. So same way, if you want to add another row, insert row, and here let us assume 110, and here let's assume it has transferred some 205 bytes. So once you do the same, you can see here it has entered everything automatically. So here is where you can mention certain other keys. Suppose you have some database where you mention some user details and other stuff. So let's add some column as like say phone or something. This is out of context, but it is fine to do some experiment like this. So let us assume this is your varchar again, because phone numbers can be anything. So let's assume it's a phone number. Let's assume its size is 20 bytes. Be liberal, when you set this length of any fields. Sometimes if it is 10 digits, you can mention 20 to 30 spaces, so that it is not any tinkering required in the future use cases. So be liberal. So what we can do is this phone we just entered. So in this case, let us see here. So in this case, you can see here the phone has that default value as 0. So in case let's just go back here. Let's mention its default value is no default value, and we save the same. So here we can just delete the values. So this way it has been cleared out. So now if you go here and if you set this as a unique key, because if you say a phone number, say here 111, and here if you say phone number 111, currently it is going to accept, but we know that the phone numbers can be unique for every user. Let's assume this is not this network database, it is some kind of user database or something like that. So in this way, let's assume the phone number should be unique in a given scenario. So in that case, this is not acceptable. So you don't need to do manual constraints and manual comparisons or manual checking in your feeding scripts like PHP scripts or something like that. You can automate the same with the database schema itself. So this is what we call as constraints for a given database, tables or rows. So you can mention this, and here again you can do a right click and you can create a new index called unique. And this way, if you do a save, it then restricts anything to be duplicated. So if you save, it may prevent you doing the same because it already have duplicate rows having the same data. So if you save, as you can see here, it is not going to accept. So for that, you need to remove, or you need to just change, and you need to go by the rules. First to change the same, and then you can do the save. So now it is accepted, as you can see here. And if you go to the indexes, you can see here you have this unique key as phone, and you have this main primary key as ID. So again, I'm saying you, if you are very curious about reading about these terms, these parameters, go through the same. You can read about these constraints, you can read about a lot of theory behind the same, and how it is imposed on this rows and columns by that database platform. So coming back to the topic, you can see here the key is successfully created, and in case if you insert a row, and anytime, now let's assume we input some data like this 230, and if you leave the same, it is not going to leave you, because when you set a unique key, it cannot have all duplicated nulls, it cannot have all default values as 0 or something. You have to enter some data. So this way you can go back and then you can just enter some value. So this way that particular constraint is imposed, and you don't need to do something this in the PHP scripts or in some let it be even Perls or let it be even Python. You don't need to do this in those scripts. The database itself takes care of the same. I know that phone number is something that is out of context in this use case. So often if you are doing it for any system profiling, maybe you don't need this unique key, but still, having said that, this is something an interesting parameter you can have. You can learn about it. So that's what. So these are various constraints you can impose on your database tables. So now we can do some couple of operations where you can do very easily in a database. You can do select star from the table name is test table. So you can just do the same. You can use the function key F9 to execute. So I did the same without using any mouse and that icon. So you can do the same, and you can also do sum of Rx from table. You can do that sum of Rx. You can also rename this sum Rx, and then if you do the same, you can see here it renames that output, because this is useful when you pull this information in a scripting code or something like that. So you can do the same, and apart from that, you can also do an average of the same AVG, something like that. Although in this case it is not appropriate, because here what is happening is the Rx, it is keep incrementing the bytes, because you are taking this raw input from this ifconfig command, let's assume. So in that case you need to have a mechanism to do a diff and then enter into the database the last entered data value, do a diff and then enter this updated value. So that way you will always have not an incremented values into the database, so that you can track parameters like bits per second, mbps and kbps and stuff like that. You can do various other things when you do plotting of these data points in the form of a graph. So that's about it. So other than that, you can do various other stuff. You can do date-wise filtering. You can tell this particular year what is the average, this particular month what is the average, and stuff like that. So again, I don't want to go much in depth. This itself shows that true potential of using a database for your system profiling. Let it be about some CPU analysis, let it be about some process analysis. When you do some profiling of operating system processes and stuff like that, you can definitely use a database and feed your values into the database. Don't use any text files and the CSV files and then put it in an Excel sheet and then try to get graphs. That is completely not a mature way to do, not a professional way to do. It's just an amateur way, because if you have millions of rows, it is not a way to do at all. So forget about doing something in the Excel sheet. And if you want graphs, you can use this Google Charts. So in this case, you need to learn a bit about JavaScripts, because these are graphs generated via JavaScripts. So you can go to the chart gallery. Yeah, you can see here you can use this platform to create any graphs. So you can see here even the system specific gauge. It shows CPU and memory utilization. For stock analysis, you have this candle charts and a simple bar charts you can see here, and simple line charts you can see here. They give various examples, and if you want to do some customization, you can take this sample code which they provide, because always you should be connected to the internet to use Google Charts, because it downloads various backend JavaScript files so that it can render that charts on your web pages. So you can see here this shows a specific example, and this is the code for the same, and this particular data points you can feed through PHP, and you can create this JavaScript. You need to have this JavaScript. This is the template they provide. Obviously you need to use the same. So you can see here to create, they have even provided a test HTML page. In that they are referring their or they have these dependencies, so they are using the same. So these dependencies are loaded, and then you can provide your data points. So this is the place where you can feed your database values into the same to get your own custom graphs. So this is where at this place you can use PHP, and if you want to do any customization instead of company performance, you need to provide as a network performance or something like that. You can rename the same, and then you can use, and then if you want it in different dimensions, you can change its width and height parameters and stuff like that. So this is very, very useful, and Google Charts I use sometimes in certain analytics whenever I have the system connected to the database, and if it is not connected to the database, I use another platform called Float. This is also open source and free. You can use this platform, and let me also open this Float examples. Here also you have this various examples. This is quite old, this is quite not so well maintained anymore, so in case if you have any bugs, it is going to stay, unlike a case like Google Charts. But the disadvantage of Google Charts is you need to be having it connected all the time to the internet, and I'm not sure if it is a public website Google Charts is supported. I'm not sure about the same, because there are certain rules and restrictions on how you use that Google Charts, I mean, they have their own privacy policy and stuff like that. You need to go through the same. But other than that, in a local system, you want to do any charts, you can use Google Charts. It is going to work perfectly. I'm using it for more than a decade, and it is just going to be, working flawless. So if not, you can use a platform like Plot, and there are various other frameworks are available to plot graphs. And last but not least, you can even do your own chart platform, in case if it is something weird charts you need to create, which is not kind of supported in these platforms. So that's about it. So this is so far you may have some all these assumptions that this is all off topic, this is not the domain I'm working and stuff like that. So please kindly take away your your assumptions, change your mindset. Like I said in that previous video, this is also very useful. You don't need to go much in depth, but at the same time you are already a programmer. It is very easy to understand these aspects, and then you can customize, and then you can use it accordingly as per the way you want in your projects, in your analytics. So with this, I would like to conclude this video. In case if you have any questions or if you want to discuss anything further, be in touch via mail. So thank you once again for watching this video. Stay tuned. Have a nice day. Bye bye.